Hi, welcome to Yoga Selection. My name is Rod. We're heading in the direction today of backbends. Make sure that you've got a yoga chair, 2 blocks, a belt and a blanket. Let's begin with Uttanasana, feet hip width Uttanasana. Hands to the floor. Use blocks if you don't easily get your hands to the floor. Find the big toe bases, press them down, and then adding to that the kneecaps grip and lift up. And be that little bit more specific. Locate the tops of the kneecaps, the inner, the outer kneecap there at the top, and lift and grip there and press back into the legs. Whilst doing that, with the big toe bases pressing down, notice how the calf muscle, just a little bit of engagement there, and it has some firmness to it that can press back against the shin bone. And it safeguards against the shin bone being pushed back. If the shin bone does push back, then we tend to lose some of the potential lift that can be gained from the feet right up through the thighs into the pelvis. And just giving a little bit of a break there to the shin. Big toe bases down, the calf muscle, just giving it some firmness, some support. And then from the soles of the feet, we can lift straight up through the shin, through the knee, through the front thigh area up to the pelvis. We hold the pelvis steady, stable as we lengthen the spine out and away from it. We lengthen the front of the spine, contain the back of the spine. With the shoulders lifting and spreading, relax your neck and let your head hang. Okay, and then release and come up. Let's use blocks today for our hands in Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward facing dog pose. We'll have the blocks as flat blocks, so flat to the floor, but up against the wall, and we've got the shorter edge of the rectangle of the yoga block in contact with the wall. And then we'll place our hands down onto the blocks. Make sure that you've got the blocks shoulder width distance. If you're finding that your hands have that tendency to slip on the blocks, just overlap a little bit the heel of the hand, but preferably, unless they're slipping, have your hands more flat, flush on the blocks. And then press back to downward facing dog pose. A moment just to settle there. Check if you need to get a little bit more of a foothold with your hands by overlapping the heel of the hand. And then bring your attention to the hands, the initial action there, that one of pressing down. And in doing that, we gain the ability to reinforce and stabilize the elbow region. And as we do that, we literally straighten the elbow, not going too far, not locking the elbows, that doesn't create a straight line, not underworking the elbows where they bend out a little, but finding the sweet spot there with the effort, the hands pressing down so that the elbows are straight, lifting, and we can make a more connected, integrated line of sensation from the hands up through that elbow region, up through the shoulders, and that line penetrates right up to the sides of the rib cage. And then as we press down with the hands, whilst doing that, as if pushing the blocks into the wall, and notice how the side ribs start to lift up in the direction of the pelvis. As the side ribs lift towards the pelvis presses back and away from the side ribs. The front thighs need to engage, lift and press back. Now, possible for the front thighs to lift and press back and for not a lot else to happen in the pose. But if we synchronize that action with the heels descending, feel how the hips respond. So tops of the thighs press back whilst bringing the heels down, and notice how the pelvis then, it's attached to the legs, lifts with them up and back. Side ribs lifting, pelvis lifting, heels descending. Relax your neck and let your head hang. And then release down, knees to the floor, and we'll come all the way up. Let's take our belt now. We'll use it for Trikonasana. In Trikonasana, we'll have our left heel to the wall, and we'll step our right foot out as the front foot. A moment just to adjust the buckle of the belt so that You've got a loop there that when you place it around your wrists, the loop of the belt keeps your wrists shoulder width. And then we'll bring the arms and the belt behind the back. And just notice pressing out into the belt, it gives you improved access to the shoulders and the upper back. So pressing out into the belt, roll your shoulders back, move your shoulder blades in, lift your chest up. Notice there's a nice symmetry to that action, even right side to left side. And observe it as we then come down to the pose. Make sure the right hip stays in. The belt won't be too far away from the back of the body here. I can even feel the contact of the belt there to the buttock region. And again, we start with that nice symmetry, pressing into the belt. Both shoulders can roll back. Pressing into the belt, both shoulder blades can move in. But then let's work a little across that symmetry, so that as we press into the belt, we can move the right shoulder blade further in and the chest turns. And then pressing into the belt, we can bring the left shoulder further back, and again the chest turns, we're looking up towards the ceiling. And then release and come up. And we'll change to the left side. Right heel to the wall. Legs length distance, our regular Trikonasana distance. Press out into the belt. Where the upper arm bones join the shoulders, draw back. Move the shoulder blades in. The spine there between the shoulder blades follows. And we get a nice lift on the sides of the chest, in the center of the chest. And we maintain that then as we come out to the side, Trikonasana. Pressing into the belt, both shoulders back. Pressing into the belt, both shoulder blades move in. And then isolate. Pressing into the belt, the left shoulder blade move in. Isolate as we press into the belt, the right shoulder back, turning the head to look up. The belt and the arms and the shoulders move back towards the wall that the heel touches. Spine and chest lengthening out towards the center of the room. Inhale and come up. Step the feet together. We'll go to Tadasana. Keep the belt there around the wrists, the arms and the belt behind the back. Feet together. Bring the weight back into the heels. And if we do that and only that, when we then grip the kneecaps and engage the quadriceps, that tendency again for the top of the shin bone to press back, and we lose that ability to generate lift from the floor up through the knee region, up into the pelvis and eventually the spine. So the counter action, the big toe base is pressing down, with the kneecaps lifting up. Again, find the top of each kneecap, grip there. The calf muscle, it shouldn't feel passive. There's some firmness there, just leaning on the shin bone, helping it to stay vertical, and just checking that the lift that can be generated from the feet comes up through that shin region, through the knee region. Front thighs draw back, move the back of the pelvis in, draw the tailbone in and down. Notice how everything feels very stable, held in position there across the pelvis, across the lower back. And that stability remains so long as the legs retain their work, as we then access more the upper back by pressing into the belt, bringing the shoulders back, moving the shoulder blades in, and that region of the spine in between the shoulder blades, moving deep into the body. We can access and free up movement in that region without just pushing the lower back forwards. Okay, and then release. Let's bring that to Purvottanasana, left heel to the wall, right foot step out. Find the initial position there. So commonly we're in this pose focusing on turning, here it would be the left outer hip, the hip of the back leg in a forward direction. And so obviously a good instruction, but it's today similar, but find it from the other side. If we press the right big toe base down and move the right outer hip back towards the wall behind. It just gives a little bit more firmness, stability to the front of the pelvis,
that we can work against with this next adjustment. And the next adjustment is pressing the left heel down and moving the left buttock in. The left heel pressed down, left buttock move in, but we're holding the right side of the pelvis back. The left buttock moves in, and then we can start to lift the front of the left hip. The left heel pressing down helps that hip to lift. And we started that process of lifting right from the base of the torso, and then we can use the belt to bring it higher up. So press into the belt and add to the front of the left hip lifting, the chest lifting. Bring the shoulders back, move the shoulder blades in to lift the chest still further. Now, as you press into the belt, make sure that the shoulders are not being pushed upwards towards the ears. Keep the shoulders down away from the ears. And now let's slowly bring the head to look up towards the ceiling directly above. Check again, left heel presses down, left buttock in, front of the left hip lifts. With the belt, we're ensuring that the chest lifts. Now that we're looking up, the chin and the chest and the front of the pelvis, all of them moving together. Now keeping that shape with the upper chest, start to come forwards, but without looking down with your eyes. Stay looking across the room, look up the wall opposite, and then pause with the spine parallel to the floor. Just notice how the head is helpful here in terms of getting more containment of the upper back. If we let the head drop, the upper back tends to round. If we lift the head up, it helps to keep that shoulder blade area more flat, more concave down into the body. And building on that, if we press into the belt, and just a little bit raise the belt up so that you can't feel the contact of the belt onto the back of the pelvis. Lifting the belt in order to move the shoulder blades in order to move the chest further forwards and out towards the center of the room. Make sure that your fingers are spreading wide apart. And then release. Come up and we'll change sides. So right heel back to the wall. Important that you can get some leverage out of the right heel. Some of you may need to allow that heel to lift off the floor ordinarily to get the hips to fully rotate. So if that is the case, fine to have the heel a little bit off the floor, but make sure it's in contact with the wall so that you have something firm to press against. Ideally the floor, if not, then pressing the heel back into the wall. But first of all, stabilize the left side of the pelvis. Left big toe base down, left outer hip draw back. And then press down into the floor with the heel, move the right buttock in. Build on that, heel press down, right buttock in, and the front of the right hip lift up. Press into the belt, shoulders back, shoulder blades in, and lift the chest. So the front of the right hip lifting, the chest lifting. Now as the head comes back, the chin as well, with the sternum bone, with the front of the pelvis lifting up. Press into the belt, scoop the back ribs into the body, lift the chest. And then coming forwards, spine parallel to the floor. Press into the belt, fingers spreading, move the shoulder blades in, sides of the chest, center of the chest, move forwards. Lifting the head helps to improve that opening in the chest. And just a little bit we lift the belt as well, but just enough to improve our ability to press the shoulder blades deeper into the body. And then release and come up. We'll keep the belt and we'll come down onto the floor ready for Salabhasana. Make sure that you allow enough room behind you for your toes to point back without making contact with the wall. We'll have the belt there. We're going to use it straight away, but just first finding the basic shape. Knees are straight, toes point back. We'll have the feet hip width apart. Once you've established that, then place the buckle around the wrists. We'll get to the work in the arms, but we'll start initially with the belt more loose. You can have the belt there resting to the back of the pelvis or the buttock region. Engage the feet, press the feet down. Press the front of the pelvis down, but without the pubic bone dominating. So the iliac crest bones more towards the sides of the front pelvis, press down into the floor, but without the tailbone lifting. Squeeze the tailbone in, and then lift the head, the shoulders, the chest, the arms. And just that first impression of the pose, we were working with it last week, the tendency for the pose to initially load the muscles in the mid and the lower back. But having the belt there improves our ability to engage the muscles in the upper back. So press into the belt, bring the shoulders back, the belt back, move the shoulder blades in, and notice as the chest lifts and opens, the head quite naturally starts to lift higher. We can look further up the wall opposite. Move the shoulder blades in to move the chest further out, further forwards towards the center of the room. And then release, remove the belt. We'll rest for a moment with the forearms under the forehead. The arms are crossed. Forehead resting down onto the forearms. And so working with the belt gives us good insight into how the potential of the upper back. But then of course it's just a matter of finding that potential when we're not using the yoga prop. So let's head in that direction now. Belt off to the side. Bring your arms back by your sides. In the previous version of the pose, we had our palms parallel. Here we'll have the palms facing directly up towards the ceiling. Again, for today, we're just going to be focused on the half version of the pose, where the feet stay to the floor. Classical pose, of course, the legs as well come off, but it's just going to link in where we're headed with the back bends that will follow if we keep our feet to the floor. Firmly pressing down the tops of the feet without rolling to the big toe side. Pressing firmly the front of the pelvis down, again without the center of the pelvis dominating. Bring the front of each hip firmly to the floor, tailbone in, and then lift the head, the shoulders, the arms. Again, notice that tendency for the pose to be more focused in the mid and lower back. And then the difficulty now to engage the upper back without the belt being there. And the key to it, the elbows. So make sure that the elbows are completely straight. Once you're clear with the elbows being straight, firm, then the shoulder blades can move in, the chest then can move forwards. As the chest moves forward, we draw the shoulders and the arms back towards the wall behind. Moving the shoulder blades deeper in helps the head and the chest to lift higher up. All right, and then release, come up. Let's take our chairs. We'll have the chairs to the wall, the back of the chair touching the wall. If you're not wanting the chair to mark the wall, put a blanket over the top. So building on some of the poses from last week, and we'll look to extend them a little more this week, taking them a little further. But let's work again with that same variation of Ustrasana, where we have the palms flat onto the seat of the chair. And then just adjust your distance. For me, there's a slight gap between the buttocks and the seat of the chair that allows me to stay upright, shoulders over the hips, hips over the knees, whilst getting a nice firm push with the hands down into the seat of the chair that improves the ability to lift and open the chest. So for me, a slight gap there, maybe a palms width gap between the chair and the back of the pelvis. See what it needs to be for you. Your feet have moved back inside the frame of the chair. You've got your palms down flat with your elbows straight, your fingers are pointing back, and your thumbs are turned out to the sides. We'll get to the arm action, but start with the legs. The shins press down, so the hips lift and move forwards. We've got the backs of the thighs lifting up from the knees. In addition to that, the tailbone moving in and down. And then pressing the hands down, we can move our shoulder blades in, the chest lifts. And refining that action as the hands press down, a little bit like how we were just working with the belt around the wrists, we were pressing out into the belt. We can do a similar action here. The hands keep their grip on the seat of the chair, but it's as if we're stretching the seat of the chair with our hands in an outward direction. So grip the chair and as if pulling the chair in opposite directions with both hands. Feel how that heightens the ability to move the shoulder blades in, the chest can then lift up. Make sure that the shoulders are staying down and away from the ears. As the head now comes back, we're looking up towards the ceiling above. And then stretching the chair out, but pressing the hands down so that the ribs there under the collarbones can lift in an upward direction towards the ceiling. Shoulder blades move in and the chest lifts up. And look forwards. And we'll bring that to Purvottanasana. Again, one of the poses we featured last week, and we'll be looking to develop it more towards Urdhva Mukha Svanasana today. Just our basic shape, we shuffle forwards with the pelvis so that the sitting bones just come over the edge of the chair. You've got your knees bent and your feet flat. We'll bring the feet together. Important then the hand position, the heel of the hand, it's roughly halfway along the seat of the chair. Make sure you ignore the frame of the chair here. You'll need to have the seat of the chair to press firmly down onto with the heels of the hands. Make sure that your elbows are straight, roll your shoulders back, and just check back, but not back behind the line of the wrists, back until they're directly, literally directly over the wrists. And then pressing the hands down, you scoop your back ribs in, lift your chest. Keep that open chest for the moment. Keep your pelvis to the seat of the chair. As you straighten your knees, heels stay to the floor, the ball of the foot at this stage is off the floor. Press down with your hands, move your back ribs in and lift your chest. Notice the overlap with the previous pose. Shoulder blades in, chest lifting, keeping that lift in the chest. Keep pressing down the hands, press with your heels, lift your hips upwards and forwards and look up towards the ceiling above. Big toe bases press down and lift the buttocks. Hands press down, shoulder blades lift up, chest lift up, and we're looking up towards the ceiling above. And then release back down and come up. Urdhva Mukha Svanasana. Overlap, but we're just approaching the pose from the opposite direction. So we're facing with the chest down now rather than up, but more or less the same muscular action, the same grip with the hands. We've got the heels of the hands onto the same section of the chair. Fingers are hooked under the seat of the chair. And then we step back to make a vertical line with the legs, vertical being with the hips directly over the ankles. So it's a little bit like a version of downward facing dog pose at this stage. And then to come to upward facing dog pose, Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, we keep the elbows straight, we just lunge forwards, bringing the shoulders over the wrists, bringing the pelvis down towards the seat of the chair. Make sure that the chest fits eventually through the arms, bend the elbows a little if you need initially, then re-straighten. Pubic bones up near the seat of the chair, straighten your legs. The chest moves forwards as the legs straighten. As the chest moves forwards, roll your shoulders back. And then we'll press back to our start position. And we'll do 3 times. Let's do 2 of 3 now. So shoulders over the wrists. Find the shape. And look for the overlap between here and the previous pose. The hands press down, the shoulder blades move in, and the chest lifts up. Just before we come out of the pose, notice the tendency for the hips a little bit to be like an anchor in a negative sense for the spine, a little bit pulling the spine and the core of the body down. And then we'll press back. A couple of breaths there, and then let's look to correct that tendency on our 3rd attempt. In some yoga poses, when the hips have that tendency to sink, we might work more from the legs. Of course, the legs are engaged in this pose, but let's try more from the perspective of lifting the hips from the regions of the body above the hips.
So if we lift the chest will lift the spine, in turn the spine will lift the pelvis. So let's, with that in mind, come back to the pose. Shoulders over the wrists, and feel the pubic bone, it comes towards the seat of the chair, but notice that tendency for it to sink, for it to pull the spine and the core of the body in a downward direction. Just support with your legs, keeping the knees straight, but do the lifting now with your arms. Press the hands down, and where the sternum bone and the collarbones meet, lift up as high as possible. Roll the shoulders back as you lift there. Notice when we lift that region of the upper chest, the spine and the core of the body follow. As does the pelvis. We keep the knees straight, but the pelvis lifting with the lead of the spine. Look up towards the ceiling above, bring the head back. And then release. And press back to your start position, and then a couple of breaths there as we now step forwards. And let's go to our chair backbend component. We'll measure. So today let's keep the chairs on the mat, and we'll measure 3 of our own foot lengths away from the wall and slide the chair into that position. I'll just show that again. So starting position, doesn't matter which foot, have the back of the heel touching the wall. With the other foot, bring the heel to the toes, and then to measure 3 of your own foot lengths, we just bring that first foot around and we place the chair so that we have the back feet of the chair 3 of our own foot lengths away from the wall. If you've got a metal chair, often you'll need to put a spare yoga mat over the seat of the chair and then a blanket over that. The chair that I've got has some built-in padding, so I won't be using additional equipment. And then sitting through the chair, just so you know where we're headed, we'll take our time with it. We'll start with the knees bent, but on the first chair back bend, we will get as far as straightening the legs. We want the balls of the feet to be to the wall, as much of the sole of the foot as possible in contact with the wall, but without the feet coming off the floor. So the back of the heel keeps its contact with the floor. It's just the sole of the foot that's to the wall. All right, let's go. So our starting position, we bring our hips through the frame of the chair. As quickly as you can, get your elbows down onto the seat of the chair, and that gives you good control as you then lie yourself back, and the elbows pressing down helps you to maneuver yourself so that you can be clear that your shoulder blades are just over the edge of the chair. So we want to make sure that no part of the shoulder blade is on the seat of the chair. If the chair is too close to the shoulder blades, it can tend to push the shoulder blades and the shoulders towards the neck. Important that the shoulders stay back, away from the neck, away from the ears. For the moment, we're keeping our legs bent. We've got our elbows on the seat of the chair, the elbows pressed down. So that's the strongest action that you're working with at this point in time. The elbows pressing down, it helps the chest to lift, it helps the upper back to be more contained. And in addition to that, a little bit the hands pulling the chair towards the centre of the room, the frame of the chair away from the wall, towards the centre of the room. And that just helps for you to get control of the pose, particularly on the first chair back bend when you've just come into it. And we'll keep that action in the arms as we now straighten the legs. Make sure that you've established the correct distance there away from the wall, 3 foot lengths. Gets most people more or less in the right spot. You may need to fine tune that a fraction. Just for the moment, keep the elbows on the seat of the chair, pressing down. Make sure the shoulders are away from the ears. And then bring your attention to your legs. So the balls of the feet press firm into the wall. Grip the kneecaps. Firm the front thighs. Notice that work in the legs, it helps to press the pelvis down into the seat of the chair. But the seat of the chair, it doesn't give, it pushes back. So we get that nice Tadasana-like quality, the fronts of the thighs pressing down,
And in opposition to that, the back of the pelvis is pushed back up. And then we can just add to that a little, just a slight grip of the buttock region. It's not fully clenching those muscles to full capacity. Just enough of a grip to move the tailbone in and towards the feet. As you do that, you'll feel that the abdominal area starts to release in a downward direction. A good way just of assessing the pose to see if it can be taken further is making sure that the abdomen can relax, release downwards, and that you can finish and complete easily each exhalation. If that is the case, then let's see if we can just loosen the hands and just bring the elbows over the edge of the seat of the chair. If the hands drop down a little, the elbows can just hang there comfortably. If we let the hands slide down too low, we tend to lose the position of the shoulder, and the shoulder pushes in towards the ears. So just now using the frame of the seat of the chair to lift and open the upper back, let your head hang back, your throat release, the neck muscles release. All right, and then to come out of the pose, let's first of all bring the elbows back to the seat of the chair, and then bend your knees so your feet are flat, press your feet down, press your elbows down, and come up leading with the chest and bringing the head up last, and we'll just pause there, neutral for a moment, with your arms folded on the top of the chair, not slumping forwards, not pushing too hard the spine into the body, just sitting comfortably in a neutral upright position. This next chair back bend, more or less the one that we've just done, except we're going to be bringing our arms through the inside of the front legs to hold the back legs. Now the yoga chair that I've got has a crossbar between the back legs and the front legs. Probably more common for yoga chairs to only have the crossbar on the back legs of the chair. If you find, like me, that you've got the crossbar at the front legs, when you do this next pose, you'll probably find that you'll need to bring your arms underneath the crossbar, not above it. So on your first attempt, if you're unfamiliar, go underneath the crossbar. The other thing, when we bring the arms through, we'll do it with the knees bent, and we'll straighten the legs last of all. All right, so bring the hips through, elbows down onto the seat of the chair. Lie yourself back, get the shoulder blades just over the edge of the chair. This time though, rather than letting the head hang back, lift the head so that you can look at the top of the frame with the head lifting. Bring the arms back and underneath the crossbar if it's there. Reach through, hold the back legs of the chair, and then you can let the head release back down. Only once you're gripping the back legs of the chair, then you can straighten the legs, as you had for the previous variation, the balls of the feet to the wall, the heels stay in contact with the floor. And then the work with the arms, so firm grip with the hands, the elbows are straight, and with the elbows straight, it's as if we're pressing the arms against the legs of the chair. So you've got the arms, importantly, through the inside of the legs of the chair. And feel how the chair does a similar work here to the belt that we had around the wrists earlier. As we press out here into the legs of the chair, previously it was the belt, it improves our ability to move our shoulder blades in. Shoulder blades moving in can lift the chest up and give us that added bit of control over the upper back. So the upper back more contained, more active in the back bend. So keeping the arms pressing out into the frame of the chair, straighten your elbows. In this particular pose, as they straighten, they lift away from the floor. And as you do that, feel how the chest there starts to lift further and open. Right, and then to come out of the pose, first of all we bend our knees. And then to get the arms out, one at a time, we'll bring them out, bring the elbows back up onto the seat of the chair, and then pressing the feet down, pressing the elbows down. Lead up with the chest, bring the head up last, and again, sitting neutral there for the moment. Of course, we haven't mentioned it, but you may have needed to adjust your chair distance, coming in a little bit closer to the wall or a little bit further out from the wall. If you weren't able to reach the wall easily with the ball of the foot, it just means that the chair's a little bit too far out and needs to move in closer. If you weren't able to straighten your knees fully, then it just means you're too close. All right, last one of these, this time the option of bringing the arms over the head. Same starting position, hips through, lie yourself back, shoulder blades over the edge. Begin with your elbows on the seat of the chair, with the chest lifting, straighten the legs, bring the balls of the feet to the wall. This time, rather than letting the elbows come down and over the edge of the chair, we'll walk our hands a little higher up the frame so the elbows are more straight. And then with the hands, rather than pulling the frame of the chair towards the centre of the room, we'll just gently press the frame in the direction of the wall. As we do that, front thighs press down, feet press into the wall, and the chest then lifts up. From there, we'll bring the arms to vertical with the elbows straight and the palms facing the wall. Then as the arms start to come over, the elbows remain straight, the palms face up towards the ceiling. There's a really clear flow to the pose, almost a waterfall-like quality from the feet moving dynamically towards the fingertips. A real clear flow from the feet working up through the legs, through the hips, through the chest, and out through the fingertips. But we anchor the feet to the wall, and keeping the elbows gripped and firm, the shoulder sockets, they stay back into the body. But that really clear flow from the body, from the feet out through the fingertips, a nice energetic movement. And then bring the hands back to the frame of the chair and elbows press onto the seat of the chair, bend your knees and come up, chest leading, head last. And let's then go for our last back bend. Keep the chair at the exact distance that it currently is, so try not to disturb that as you come out of the chair. We'll take a blanket and fold it lengthways in half. So a blanket as you would use for shoulder stand, then folded lengthways into this fold. We place that over the top of the chair. Important that we've got the narrow blanket because we don't want to obstruct our ability to grip the side frames of the chair here. And then we're sitting on the chair. Sit back without slouching, just feel where the frame of the chair is. So for me, I can feel that top of the chair is coming probably a little bit higher than what the seat of the chair was previously for the back bends. The shoulder blades, just I can feel it's in that bottom edge of the shoulder blade area. And then the feet, heels come up the legs of the chair, but you keep the balls of the feet firm to the floor. And most of these yoga chairs, there's a V where the front and the back legs of the chair meet. You can hook your fingers through that V there and then clamp your forearms, elbows, upper arms onto the side of the chair, just so that you've got good control of the chair. You're clamping it in position with the arms, the elbows, also the heels. As we then lift our hips off the floor, we'll slide a little bit, make sure that you slide, that the chair doesn't slide. And you stay looking forwards and then upwards. And then one hand at a time, we can bring the hands over to the wall. At this point, the head can hang back. Check again the section of the back where the chair is positioned. The shoulder blades have come further over now. So the chair's pressing into the back, not into the shoulder blades. From there, we can walk the hands a little lower down the wall. And it's got a similar flow to the pose. The feet press down. This energetic movement from the feet up through the legs, through the pelvis, through the chest, into the hands to the wall. But we're pressing the hands to the wall. Again, the shoulder sockets, they resist back into the body. We press the hands into the wall, the chest lifting and moving to the wall. But the trapezius muscle, it stays back and away from the neck. And then walk the hands back up the wall. Bring one hand at a time back to the triangle there between the front and the back legs. lower the pelvis down as you again sit back to neutral. And let's then, to release our back, I'm just going to move that blanket out of the way. We'll go to chair malasana. Bring the hips back. Position your feet, so I've got the backs of my heels level to the front feet of the chair, but the heels are slightly wider than the front legs of the chair. So that the chair foot, as I look down, it's almost touching my inner heels. And then we reach forwards, bringing the hands to the floor. Make sure at this point that your shins are vertical. It'll help your back to release more effectively if we avoid the knees leaning forwards of the ankles. So heels need to be anchored, shins vertical. At that point we can walk the hands back, bend the elbows, relax the arms, and just ensure that the spine feels happy with that release. Either stay at that point if you need to consolidate, or reaching through the legs of the chair to hold the crossbar between the back legs of the chair. And then again, heels press firm to the floor, squeeze the knees to the shoulders, resist the shoulders back to the knees. Keeping the sitting bones anchored to the seat of the chair, lift the head and look across the room. Back ribs move down, chest moving out towards the center of the room. And then let's release and come up, and we'll stay with our chair. We'll use it for Shavasana. We'll have our calves resting up onto the seat of the chair. Blanket for your head. If you've got a metal seat on your yoga chair, you might want to put a blanket over it just so that the coldness of the metal isn't coming through to the calf region. Half fold blanket for your head, lying on your back. Knees slightly forwards of the hips, not directly above. Blanket for the head. So working to touch back in on some of the work from our previous class, and also just to extend it a little. And with that in mind, last week just introducing some very brief pranayama-like pauses to our Shavasana breath, in a similar way to Viloma pranayama, just very touching on that subtly. Let's do that again today, working with at first the exhalation. So just your normal Shavasana breath, we're just going to give it a little bit of a nudge, locating the exact end of the exhalation. And when you arrive at that point, for the next few cycles of breath, several cycles of breath, just briefly halt the breath at that point. Just stop it, pause it for no more than a 3, count to yourself, 1, 2, 3 count. So it shouldn't make you feel out of breath, it just gives you a little bit of a disruption to your habitual breath pattern, and we'll see if it shows anything up. So just work to your capacity as you breathe out. Just watch the breath and notice at that point when the breath stops, when the exhalation finishes, and just briefly pause the breath at that point. Try not to add tension to the body as you do it. Just light grip, a 1, 2, 3 count. And then let the breath return to normal. And then just observing that with each exhalation, locating the end of the breath and briefly pausing, holding. But also just noticing the impact on the breath of doing that. And after a few cycles there of doing that, initially when we first look, it probably feels very clear, very certain exactly where the end of the breath is. Once you've done it a few times, we can start to wonder if we're maybe just a little too preemptive in locating the end of the breath. We might just need to give the breath a little bit more time for the true end of the breath to be revealed. And then at that point, again, just holding, briefly pausing. But just noticing how the breath is impressionable, and just that little bit of a pause, it's like the breath integrates that, likes that, gives it a little bit more space to spread out into. And then at this stage we've worked with consecutive breaths. And notice now when you get to the end of the exhalation, we don't need to do as much work to enforce the pause. It's almost like the breath was happy that we were doing it and has now incorporated that into the natural breath. So we go to pause, but then we realise there's not a lot to do. There's already that pause there, pre-existing, and we can just release into that pause. So just noticing the impressionable quality of the breath. And of course we're disrupting a little our normal habitual breathing, but now that we've done that, important that we just allow the breath to be as it wants to be. We can get out of its way. Just setting a nice environment for it to find a natural, spontaneous rhythm. And now we just allow the breath to do its thing. Smooth, soft inhalation. Smooth, soft exhalation. Another few moments there, quiet. All right. And then we'll take a couple of slightly deeper in-breaths. And then bring your knees in towards your chest. Eyes open. And from there, roll to the side and come up. Thank you for practicing with Yoga Selection.